My body slammed hard against the frozen road. I slid across the icy snow, pain tearing through me like a blade, but it was nothing compared to the sting of my daughter-in-law's voice shouting from the car door as it slammed shut. "Find your own way home, you miserable old hag." The engine roared and faded into the distance, leaving behind a cloud of gray smoke and the cold silhouette of my son behind the wheel. They left me lying there, helpless in the middle of a snowstorm, convinced I'd freeze to death. But they were dead wrong. When I opened my eyes in the sterile white of the recovery room, what I did next would make them wish they had finished me off when they had the chance. My name is Evelyn. I'm 60 years old. Just hours ago, I was sitting in the car with my daughter-in-law Jessica and my son Mark. The heater was blasting, but the air inside Mark's truck was cold enough to freeze my breath. "Mark," I said, leaning forward from the back seat. "This isn't the way to Elm Street. We passed the turn miles ago." Mark didn't answer. He stared straight ahead at the swirling snow, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. He looked like a man being marched to the gallows. "Mark?" I tried again. "He can't hear you, Evelyn," Jessica said from the passenger seat. She didn't even look up from her phone. "He's concentrating." We weren't in the suburbs anymore. The manicured lawns had disappeared 20 minutes ago, replaced by the dense, towering pines of Blackwood Ridge. There were no other cars. Just us, the gray sky, and the endless white road. "Pull over, Mark," Jessica ordered suddenly. "Here." Mark's voice cracked. "Jess, are you sure? Pull over." The truck skidded slightly as Mark slammed on the brakes. We came to a halt on the shoulder of a logging road. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. "Why are we stopping?" I asked, clutching my handbag tight. "Is the house around here?" Jessica unbuckled her seatbelt and turned around. The mask she had worn all morning, the polite smile, the sweet tone, was gone. Her eyes were hard, flat stones. "There is no house, Evelyn," she said. My heart skipped a beat. "What? The open house? It's a lie. Just like your promise to help us was a lie." Before I could process the words, Jessica lunged over the center console. Her hand shot out and grabbed the strap of my bag. "Give me this," she snarled. "Jessica, what are you doing?" I gasped, pulling back. "Mark, stop her." I looked at my son. My boy. He sat frozen, staring at the windshield wipers flapping back and forth. He wouldn't look at me. He couldn't. "He knows," Jessica sneered, yanking the bag violently. The strap dug into my shoulder. "He knows you're a parasite, Evelyn. A selfish old leech sitting on a gold mine while we drown in debt." I'm your mother," I screamed, panic finally taking over. "You're a burden," Jessica shouted. With a strength I didn't know she had, she wrenched the bag from my hands. Then, she shoved her door open, stomped into the snow, and yanked my door wide. The wind hit me like a physical blow. "Get out," she commanded. "No," I shrank back against the seat. "Mark, please." Jessica didn't wait. She grabbed my coat and pulled. I wasn't ready. I tumbled out of the high cabin, flailing. I hit the frozen ground hard. The impact knocked the wind out of me. I tasted ice and blood. My hip slammed against a rock hidden under the snow, sending a bolt of white-hot agony up my spine. I tried to scramble up, gasping for air. Jessica stood over me, looking like a giant against the gray sky. She tossed my bag onto the front seat and looked down at me with pure disgust. "You love that house so much?" she spat, her breath steaming in the cold air. "Then keep it. Take it with you to hell." "Jessica," I wheezed. "Find your own way back, you old bitch." She slammed the door. The sound echoed through the forest like a gunshot. "Mark," I screamed, dragging myself toward the truck. "Don't leave me." I saw Mark's face in the side mirror. He looked pale, terrified. For a second, our eyes met. "Stop," I begged him silently. "Please, son. Stop." He shifted the gear into drive. The tires spun, kicking a spray of slush into my face. The truck lurched forward. I watched, helpless, as the red taillights moved away. They got smaller and smaller, fading into the curtain of falling snow. Then, they were gone. I was alone. I lay in the snow, the cold already seeping through my coat, biting into my skin. No phone, no ID, no sun. The wind howled through the trees, sounding like 1,000 voices laughing at me. I closed my eyes, and the world went white. The smell of sage and roasted turkey is a ghost now, haunting me in this freezing wind. But just 24 hours ago, that scent was real. It was the smell of Thanksgiving. It was the smell of home. My mind drifts back to yesterday. The fire was crackling in the hearth, casting a warm, dancing orange glow across the living room walls. I had spent 2 days preparing. I polished the silverware until it gleamed like mirrors. I ironed the good linen tablecloth, the one Frank had bought for our 10th anniversary. Every napkin was folded into a perfect swan. I wanted everything to be perfect for Mark and Jessica. When they arrived, the air in the house shifted. It wasn't the warm bustle of family coming together. It was something else, heavier. Mark walked in first. He looked tired. His shoulders were slumped, and he hugged me loosely, a quick pat on the back rather than an embrace. Jessica followed him. She didn't hug me, she offered a cheek for me to kiss, her eyes already scanning the room. She wasn't looking at the family photos on the mantel. She was looking at the hardwood floors. She was inspecting the crown molding. She looked like an appraiser, not a daughter-in-law. "The place looks spacious, Evelyn," she said, her voice dripping with a sweetness that didn't reach her eyes. "You have so much room here for just one person." "It holds a lot of memories," I replied, forcing a smile. "Come. The game is on. The Lions are losing, as usual." Dinner was an exercise in tension. The only sounds were the clinking of silverware against china and the low hum of the refrigerator. Mark barely spoke. He focused on his plate, cutting his turkey into tiny, precise squares, as if dissecting a problem he couldn't solve. Jessica, however, was full of energy. She poured herself a second glass of Chardonnay and leaned back in her chair. The candlelight reflected in her eyes, making them look sharp. "Mark and I have been looking at real estate prices in the area," she started, swirling the wine in her glass. "The market is hot right now, Evelyn. Really hot. This neighborhood specifically." I felt my stomach tighten. I put my fork down. "Is that so?" "It is," she continued, her gaze locking onto mine. "We found a house. A beautiful place. 4 bedrooms, modern kitchen, smart home system. It's perfect for our future family. But the down payment is steep. And the interest rates. Well, you know." She paused. She was waiting for me to take the bait. I remained silent, taking a sip of water. "We were thinking," Jessica pressed on, her voice losing a fraction of its faux sweetness. "It doesn't make sense for you to live here alone. This house is old. The maintenance must be a nightmare. The roof, the plumbing, it's a ticking time bomb for someone on a fixed income." "I manage just fine, Jessica," I said softly. "For now. But think about the future. We think it's best if you sell this place. You can give us the proceeds for our down payment. We'll build an in-law suite in the new house. You'll live with us. No bills, no worries. We take care of you." Mark finally looked up. He looked at Jessica, then at me. His eyes were pleading, but I couldn't tell if he was pleading for me to agree or for me to save him from her. I looked around the room. I saw the scratch on the floorboard by the window where Frank used to pace when he was worried. I saw the bookshelf he built with his own hands, slightly crooked on the left side. This wasn't just an asset. This was Frank. This was my life. "I appreciate the offer," I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands under the table. "But no. This is my home. Frank and I worked 40 years to pay this mortgage off. I intend to stay here until I die." The room went silent. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Jessica set her wine glass down hard. "That's selfish, Evelyn. We are struggling. Your son is drowning in work, and you're sitting on a gold mine, clutching onto sentimental dust." "It's not dust to me," I whispered. Let's have pie." Mark interjected, his voice cracking. He stood up abruptly to clear the table. After dinner, the silence was suffocating. I went into the kitchen to load the dishwasher. Mark went to the patio to smoke, a habit he picked up recently. Jessica stayed in the living room. When I came back out to collect the coffee cups, Jessica wasn't there. She had gone to the powder room. Her oversized designer handbag was sitting open on the sofa, spilling its contents. I intended to move it to the side so I could sit down. That's when I saw it. A manila folder stuck out from the chaos of lipstick tubes and receipts. The label on the tab was typed in bold, black letters. "Power of attorney, Evelyn Miller." My heart hammered against my ribs. I froze. I looked toward the hallway to make sure she wasn't coming back. My trembling fingers reached out and opened the folder. It wasn't just a draft. It was a complete legal document, transferring control of my finances, my medical decisions, and my real estate assets to Mark and Jessica. It was dated 2 weeks ago. There was a sticky note attached to the front page in Jessica's handwriting. Need to get the old bat to sign this before the open house. Old bat. I felt sick. A wave of nausea rolled over me. They hadn't just come for dinner. They had come with a plan. A strategy. They had discussed this. They had prepared for my refusal. I heard the toilet flush down the hall. Panic seized me. I shoved the papers back into the folder and pushed it deep into her bag. I sat down on the armchair opposite the sofa, picking up a magazine. I stared at the page, but the words were a blur. My heart was beating so loud I was afraid they could hear it. Why didn't I confront them right then? Why didn't I scream and throw them out? Because I was a mother. And a part of me, a foolish, desperate part of me, wanted to believe I was wrong. Maybe it was just a contingency plan. Maybe they were just worried about my health. Maybe I was reading too much into it. I didn't want to ruin Thanksgiving. I didn't want to lose my son. Jessica walked back into the room. She looked at her bag, then at me. Her face was a mask of indifference. Mark says we should head out soon, she said, checking her watch. Okay, I said. My voice sounded hollow to my own ears. Mark came back in, smelling of cold air and tobacco. Mom, about earlier, he started. Don't worry about it, I interrupted him. I couldn't bear to hear him lie. We have a surprise for you though, Jessica said, standing up and buttoning her coat. Tomorrow. We want to show you the house we're looking at, just so you can see what we're talking about. No pressure. Just look at it. I looked at Mark. He nodded, avoiding my eyes. Okay, I said. I'll go. I thought if I showed interest, if I played along, maybe the tension would ease. Maybe they would throw away that folder. Jessica smiled. It was a victory smile. Great. We'll pick you up at 9. Dress warm. It's going to be cold. They left. I stood in the doorway and watched their taillights disappear down the driveway. I locked the door. I leaned my forehead against the cold wood of the entryway. The house was quiet again, but the warmth was gone. The fire had died down to embers. Tomorrow, I whispered to the empty room. I had no idea that tomorrow would be the end of my life as I knew it. I went to sleep that night, feeling uneasy, clutching Frank's old pillow, unaware that the document in Jessica's bag was not the worst thing she had planned for me. The worst was yet to come. A blast of wind slapped my face, tearing me away from the memory of the warm fireplace. I gasped, sucking in air that felt like shattered glass. The Thanksgiving turkey, the smell of sage, the heat of the hearth, it all vanished. I was back in the snow. I was back in hell. My body was convulsing. Violent shivers racked my frame, shaking me so hard my teeth clacked together. Clack, clack, clack. The sound was loud in the silence of the forest. I tried to push myself up again, but my arms were like wet noodles. My legs didn't feel like they belonged to me anymore. They were just heavy logs attached to my hips. You have to keep moving, Evie. The voice was clear, deep, warm. I looked up. Standing by a pine tree, just a few feet away, was Frank. He was wearing his old red flannel jacket, the one with the patch on the elbow. He looked young, strong. He wasn't sick like he was at the end. He was holding his fishing rod, smiling at me. Frank? I croaked. My voice was a whisper, lost in the wind. You came back. Don't go to sleep, honey, he said, pointing a finger at me. You know the rule. If you sleep in the snow, you don't wake up. Get up, move your toes, wiggle your fingers. I smiled. Frank always knew what to do. He was an Eagle Scout. He taught Mark how to build a fire. He taught me how to navigate by the stars. I'm tired, Frank, I whined, feeling a strange, heavy comfort settling over me. The pain in my hip was fading. The cold wasn't biting anymore. It felt warm, like a heavy wool blanket was being wrapped around my shoulders. I just want to rest for a minute. No. Frank's voice boomed, sharp and angry. Fight, Evelyn. Do not let them win. Them? Mark, Jessica. The image of the truck taillights flashed in my mind. The red eyes of a demon driving away. The anger flared up in my chest, a tiny spark in the frozen ash. Frank was right. If I died here, I was just a tragic accident, a confused old woman who wandered off. Jessica would cry crocodile tears at my funeral. Mark would inherit the house. No, I gritted my teeth. I won't let her have it. I dug my fingers into the snow. I dragged my body forward an inch. Then another. Help! I tried to scream, but it came out as a pathetic squeak. Then, I heard it. Not Frank's voice, not the wind. The crunch of boots on snow. Rhythmic. Steady. Crunch. 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 Wait up, Arthur. My knee is acting up again. A voice. A real, human voice. I forced my head up. Through the blurry tunnel of my vision, I saw colors. Bright, unnatural colors. Neon orange. Electric blue. They stood out against the white world like beacons of hope. Help! I rasped. One of the figures stopped. He tilted his head. He was wearing a bright orange parka and carrying hiking poles. Did you hear that? The man asked. Hear what? The wind? Another voice replied. No. It sounded like, over there, by the ridge. The orange figure started moving fast. Surprisingly fast for an old man. He dropped his poles and slid down the embankment towards me. Oh my God, he shouted. We have a situation. Call 911. Get the emergency blanket. Now. Suddenly, there were hands on me. Warm, gloved hands. They weren't rough like Jessica's. They were gentle but firm. Ma'am? Can you hear me? Squeeze my hand if you can hear me. I tried. I think my fingers twitched. She's alive. Severe hypothermia. Look at her lips. Get the foil. Hurry. I felt something metallic and crinkly being wrapped around me. The sound was like static in my ears. Someone was rubbing my arms. Someone else was putting a hat on my head. I looked up at the man holding my shoulders. He had a gray beard, trimmed neat. His eyes were brown, framed by wire-rimmed glasses that were fogging up. I knew those eyes. Tuesday mornings. The public library. The table by the window where the sun hits the floor. I read my romance novels. He reads the Wall Street Journal and the local Gazette. We never spoke much. Just a nod. A polite, good morning. Once, he picked up a bookmark I dropped. Another time, we exchanged a smile when a teenager was being too loud near the history section. Arthur? I whispered. The man froze. He leaned closer, squinting behind his foggy glasses. He brushed a stray lock of wet hair from my forehead. Evelyn? His voice broke. Evelyn Miller? From the library? I blinked, tears leaking from the corners of my eyes. They felt hot on my frozen skin. It's me, I breathed. Oh, dear God, Arthur said, turning to his friends. I know her. This is Evelyn. Keep rubbing her hands. Don't let her drift off. Ben, how far out is that ambulance? ETA 10 minutes. They're coming from the valley. Ben shouted from the road above. Stay with me, Evelyn, Arthur commanded, his voice shifting from shocked to authoritative. I remembered then, he wasn't just a reader. Someone at the library told me he used to be a judge, or a lawyer. He had that tone. The tone of a man who controls a courtroom. You are going to be okay. We've got you. For the first time since the truck drove away, I didn't feel alone. I wasn't just a piece of trash thrown on the roadside. I was Evelyn. I was known. The next few minutes were a blur of noise and activity. The wail of a siren cutting through the forest, the slam of doors, paramedics in uniforms. A stretcher, they lifted me up. The movement sent a jolt of agony through my hip that made me cry out. Easy, easy on the left side, Arthur instructed them, hovering close like a guardian angel. They loaded me into the back of the ambulance. It was bright inside, too bright. The heat hit me like a physical wall, making my skin prickle and burn as the blood started to flow back to my extremities. Sir, you have to stay back, a paramedic said to Arthur. I'm riding with her, Arthur said. He didn't ask. He stated it. She has no one else here. The paramedic looked at Arthur's stern face and nodded. Hop in. The doors slammed shut, sealing us in. The engine roared. We were moving. I lay on the stretcher, wrapped in layers of blankets, wires attached to my chest. The monitor beeped a slow, weak rhythm. Beep, beep, beep. Arthur sat on the bench beside me. He took off his glove and held my hand. His hand was rough, calloused, and incredibly warm. "Evelyn," he said softly, leaning over. "We need to contact your family. Is there a husband? Children? I can look up the number." Panic surged through me. The monitor started beeping faster. Beep, beep, beep. No, not them. They would come. They would smile. They would tell the doctors I was confused. Dementia. They would finish what they started. I squeezed Arthur's hand. I squeezed it with every ounce of strength I had left in my dying body. "No," I rasped. My throat felt like sandpaper. "Evelyn?" Arthur looked concerned. "We need to let them know." I pulled him closer. I needed him to hear. I needed him to believe. "Don't call my son," I whispered, each word a struggle. Arthur frowned. "Your son? Why?" I looked into his eyes. I saw kindness there, but also intelligence. He would understand. He had to. They. I gasped for air, fighting the blackness that was creeping into the edges of my vision again. They pushed me. They left me. Arthur's face changed. The concern hardened into something else. Shock. Then realization. And finally, a cold, sharp anger that matched the blizzard outside. He didn't pull his hand away. He gripped mine tighter. "They did this to you?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. I nodded weakly. "Don't let them near me." "I won't," Arthur promised. He looked at the paramedic, then back at me. "You are safe now, Evelyn. I give you my word. Nobody is going to hurt you again." I closed my eyes. The beeping of the monitor slowed down. The pain was still there, but the terror was gone. Blood, I realized as consciousness slipped away, doesn't make a family. Sometimes, it's just a biological accident. And sometimes, a stranger holding your hand on a Tuesday morning is the only family you have left. The ambulance swayed as it sped toward the hospital. I drifted into the dark, but this time, I wasn't afraid. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was a witness, and I had found my counsel. The ceiling was white, stark, blinding white. It wasn't the soft cream color of my bedroom ceiling, the one with the water stain in the corner that looked like a rabbit. This was industrial white. The smell hit me next, antiseptic, floor wax, and the metallic tang of blood. I blinked, my eyelids feeling like sandpaper. The rhythmic beep, beep, beep of the monitor was the only anchor keeping me from drifting back into the dark. I turned my head. It was a struggle. My neck felt stiff, and a dull ache throbbed in my hip. In the chair beside the bed, a figure sat hunched over. He was wearing a rumpled sweater and reading a book. The soft light of the bedside lamp caught the silver in his beard. Arthur. He wasn't an illusion. He was real. And he was still here. "Arthur?" My voice was a croak. He looked up instantly, snapping the book shut. His eyes, usually calm behind those wire-rimmed glasses, looked tired, red-rimmed. "You're back with us," he said softly, leaning forward. He didn't smile, but his shoulders relaxed, as if he had been holding a heavy weight and finally set it down. "Don't try to move too much. You have a hairline fracture in your hip and severe hypothermia. You've been out for 6 hours. 6 hours, I repeated. The memories came flooding back. The truck, the snow, the look on Mark's face as he drove away. The pain wasn't just in my hip anymore. It was in my chest, a hollow, gaping wound where my heart used to be. The door opened. A nurse walked in, followed by a uniformed police officer. The officer looked young, maybe 30. He held a clipboard. "Glad to see you awake, ma'am," the officer said politely. "I'm Officer Miller, no relation, I assume." He offered a small, professional smile. "We need to get some information. We couldn't find any ID on you. The gentleman here said he knows you from the library but doesn't know your last name or next of kin." Arthur looked at me. His expression was unreadable, but his hand rested slightly on the bed railing, a silent signal of support. "Can you tell me your name, ma'am? We need to contact your family. Someone must be worried sick about you." Worried sick. The words echoed in my head. Were they worried? Or were they celebrating? Were they clinking champagne glasses in the house they bought with my life insurance money? If I told him my name, Evelyn Miller, he would run it through the system. He would find Mark. He would call Mark. "We found your mother," She's alive. And Mark would come. He would rush in here with flowers and tears. He would tell the doctors I had dementia. That I wandered off. That I was confused. He would take me home. And next time there wouldn't be a road. Next time, there wouldn't be Arthur. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through me. I looked at the officer. I looked at the pen poised over his paper. I started. Then I stopped. I closed my eyes for a second, taking a breath. When I opened them, I made a choice. I don't remember, I lied. The officer blinked. You don't remember your name? No, I said, my voice steady. My head hurts. Everything is fuzzy. It wasn't entirely a lie. My world was fuzzy. Everything I thought I knew about love and family had been erased. Arthur didn't flinch. He didn't correct me. He sat there, stoic as a statue. Okay, the officer sighed, scratching his head. That happens sometimes with trauma and hypothermia. We'll run your prints, but without a record, it might take time. For now, we'll admit you as a Jane Doe. We'll try again in the morning. He left the room. The nurse checked my IV bag, gave me a sympathetic pat on the arm, and followed him out. The room was quiet again. You don't have amnesia, Evelyn, Arthur said. It wasn't a question. No, I whispered. Good, he said. He took off his glasses and cleaned them with the edge of his sweater. It was a deliberate, slow movement. When he put them back on, the kind librarian was gone. In his place sat the retired judge. His gaze was piercing, analytical. Now, tell me everything. Start from the moment you got in that truck. Leave nothing out. I told him. I told him about the shortcut. The argument. The look in Jessica's eyes, like I was a stain she wanted to scrub off her floor. I told him about the bag. The push, the cold ground, and the last word she said to me. Keep the house, take it with you to hell. I spoke calmly. I didn't cry. I think I had run out of tears out there in the snow. Arthur listened without interrupting. He didn't gasp. He didn't offer empty platitudes. He listened like he was taking deposition. When I finished, the silence stretched between us, heavy and thick. That wasn't a domestic dispute, Arthur finally said. His voice was low, devoid of emotion, pure logic. They took your phone. They took your ID. They drove you to a remote location with zero cell service in freezing conditions. They disabled you by pushing you. He leaned in closer. Evelyn, listen to me. This wasn't abandonment. This was attempted murder. The words hung in the air. Attempted murder. I wanted to deny it. I wanted to say, no, that's my son. He's weak, but he's not a killer. But I remembered his face. The way he looked away. He didn't stop the car. He knew, my son. I choked out. Your son is an accomplice, Arthur cut in sharply, and his wife is the primary aggressor, but right now, it is your word against theirs. If we call the police back in here, they will bring Mark in. Mark will say you got confused, got angry, and demanded to be let out. He'll say he panicked. A good lawyer will get him off with a slap on the wrist for endangerment. Or worse, they'll declare you mentally incompetent and put you under his guardianship. Guardianship? I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature, the power of attorney. I saw it in Jessica's bag. Exactly, Arthur nodded grimly. That is their goal. Control the asset, dispose of the liability. That's you. Just then, there was a light knock on the door. A man in plain clothes entered. He looked like a younger, fitter version of Arthur. He had the same serious eyes. Dad, the man said, nodding to Arthur. Then he looked at me. Ma'am, this is my son, Ben. Arthur introduced him. He's a detective with the county sheriff's department. He's off duty, but I asked him to check something. Ben walked to the foot of the bed. He looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. I checked the traffic cams near the trail entrance, like Dad asked, Ben said. We got a visual of a black Ford F-150 entering the logging road at 9:15 a.m. 3 passengers. It exited at 9:55 a.m. 2 passengers. He paused, looking at his father. Go on, Arthur urged. I also drove past the address registered to the plate, Ben continued. Mark Miller's house. The truck is in the driveway. He was out there washing it. Washing it? I asked. But it's snowing. Exactly, Ben said, his voice hardening. Nobody washes a truck in a blizzard unless they're trying to wash something off. Mud, fingerprints on the passenger door handle, DNA. Arthur turned to me. He is destroying evidence, Evelyn. That is consciousness of guilt. He thinks you are dead. He is cleaning the crime scene. I stared at the white blanket covering my legs. My hands were trembling, but not from fear anymore. It was rage. A slow, burning rage. Mark was washing his truck. He wasn't searching for me. He wasn't calling the police. He was washing away the traces of his mother. What do? I asked, looking at Arthur. If I go to the police now? If you go now, without hard proof, it becomes a mess, Arthur said. He clasped his hands together. We need more. We need the paper trail. We need to know exactly what financial crimes they have committed. We need to let them think they have won. Let them think I'm dead? Let them think you are missing, Arthur corrected. Let Jane Doe stay here for a few days. The doctors say you need recovery time anyway. While you heal, Ben and I will dig. We will build a case so watertight that when you finally walk back into their lives, they won't have a prayer. I looked out the window. It was pitch black outside. My reflection stared back at me in the glass. I looked old, pale, bruised, but I was alive. Mark and Jessica wanted the house? Fine. They wanted the money? Fine. They wanted me out of the picture? Okay, I said softly. I turned back to Arthur and Ben. My name is Jane Doe. Arthur nodded, a flicker of respect in his eyes. Rest now, Jane, he said. Tomorrow, we start working. I laid my head back on the pillow. The tears were gone. My heart was still broken, but the pieces were starting to rearrange themselves into something harder. Something sharper. If they want me dead, I thought, closing my eyes, then I will be dead. And I will haunt them until they beg for mercy. 7 days. I have been a ghost for 7 days. While the snow melted outside, revealing the dirty slush of the city streets, I sat in the guest bedroom of Sarah's bungalow. Sarah was the nurse who cleaned the gravel out of my wounds in the ER. When the doctors discharged me, she refused to let me go to a motel. You need a home, Evelyn, she had said, her voice leaving no room for argument. And I have an empty room. Plus, I make a killer chicken soup. So, I stayed. It was a strange limbo. I was dead to the world, yet I was drinking tea in a stranger's kitchen, plotting the destruction of my own son. My daily routine was simple. I woke up. I did the physical therapy exercises for my hip. It hurt, a sharp, grinding pain, but I welcomed it. The pain kept me focused. It reminded me of the cold road. It reminded me of the push. Then, the work began. Arthur and Ben came over every evening. We turned Sarah's dining table into a war room. Papers were stacked in neat piles. Legal pads were filled with notes. We have a problem with the narrative, Ben said one night, tossing a flyer onto the table. I picked it up. It was a photo of me from last Christmas. I was smiling, holding a glass of eggnog. Above my head, in bold red letters, was the word, missing. Read the fine print, Ben said, his jaw tight. I read it out loud. Evelyn Miller, 65 years old, suffers from early onset dementia and confusion. Last seen wandering near Blackwood Ridge. If found, please contact her son, Mark. Dementia. I put the paper down. My hand was steady. They are planting the seed, I said, my voice cold. If I show up alive, they will say I wandered off. If I accuse them, they will say I am hallucinating. They are discrediting the witness before she even takes the stand. Arthur took a sip of his black coffee. He looked like a general surveying a battlefield. Which is why we need the affidavit. Dr. Evans is coming tomorrow. Dr. Evans was a psychiatrist and an old colleague of Arthur's. The next morning, he spent 2 hours with me. We didn't just talk. He tested me, memory tests, logic puzzles, cognitive assessments. When he finished, he signed a document with a flourish. Evelyn, he said, handing me the paper, you are as sharp as a tack. This document certifies that you are of sound mind. It is dated today. Whatever lies they tell about your mental state, this piece of paper destroys them. I filed it in the folder marked evidence, but the real blow came on Thursday. I had recovered my phone number. I went to the carrier store in the next town over, wearing sunglasses and a scarf, and got a new SIM card. I put it into an old smartphone. Sarah lent me. As soon as the network connected, the the notifications flooded in. Missed calls from neighbors, fake worried texts from Jessica, and one voicemail from the bank. It was from Mrs. Higgins, the branch manager at First National. I had banked there for 40 years. I dialed her back immediately. "Mrs. Higgins? It's Evelyn Miller." "Oh, thank heavens." Mrs. Higgins gasped. "Evelyn, we saw the flyers. We were so worried. Are you all right?" "I am safe," I said, keeping it vague. "I am staying with a friend. I lost my phone, that's all." "Oh, that is a relief." Mark seemed so distraught when he came in. I froze. "Mark was at the bank?" "Yes, dear. Yesterday. He brought in the loan modification paperwork." My blood ran cold. "What loan modification?" "The one you discussed," she said, sounding confused. "The second mortgage on your house. To release equity for." "What was it? Medical expenses?" "He brought the papers signed by you. He said you signed them the morning you went missing, just in case." I gripped the phone so hard the plastic creaked. I had never signed a loan. The house was paid off. It was free and clear. That was my safety net. "Mrs. Higgins," I said, forcing my voice to remain calm. "I need you to listen to me very carefully. Do not process those papers." "But Mark said it was urgent." "Did you look at the signature?" I asked. "Well, yes. It looked a bit shaky. But Mark said your arthritis was bad that day." "Mrs. Higgins," I cut her off. "I did not sign those papers. That signature is a forgery." Silence on the other end of the line. "Evelyn, that is a serious accusation. That's fraud." "I know," I said. "And I need you to do something for me. I need you to make a copy of those documents. The ones with the fake signature. Keep the originals safe. Do not process the money. Tell Mark there is a processing delay. Can you do that for me?" Yes. Of course. I'll flag it for review immediately." I hung up. I sat there in Sarah's kitchen, staring at the wall. Mark hadn't just tried to kill me. He had sold me out before we even got in the truck. He forged my signature to mortgage my house, then drove me into the woods to make sure I never came back to dispute it. He planned to use the missing person status and the power of attorney to finalize the loan. He was going to turn my home into cash to buy his new life. I felt a tear run down my cheek. But it wasn't sadness. It was the last drop of maternal love leaving my body. The front door opened. Arthur and Ben walked in, stomping snow off their boots. They looked grave. "We have news," Arthur said, not even taking off his coat. "I have news too," I said, standing up. The pain in my hip flared, but I ignored it. Mark forged my signature on a bank loan. He tried to mortgage my house yesterday. Ben let out a low whistle. "Bank fraud. That's a federal crime. Plus the identity theft." "Mom, that's the nail in the coffin." "It gets worse," Arthur said. He pulled his phone out. "Look at this." He held the screen up for me to see. It was a photo of my front yard. There was a new sign planted in the snow, right next to the walkway Frank had paved with river stones. It was a bright, cheerful yellow sign. "Estate sale. This Sunday. Everything must go. Proceeds to fund the search for Evelyn Miller." I stared at the image. They weren't just stealing the house. They were selling the insides. My furniture. Frank's books. The china. The painting I bought in Paris. They were stripping the carcass before the body was even found. "They are calling it a fundraiser," Arthur said, his voice dripping with disgust. "They are selling your belongings to pay for the search parties. It's a cover. They are liquidating everything of value before anyone asks questions." I looked at the date on the sign. Sunday. That was 2 days from now. A strange calm settled over me. It was the calm of a judge who has heard all the evidence and is ready to deliver the sentence. "They want an open house," I said softly. I looked at Arthur. Then at Ben. Then at Sarah, who was standing in the doorway wiping her hands on a dish towel. "They want to invite the whole neighborhood into my home," I continued. "They want a show." I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Then let's give them a show," I said. "Ben, do you still have that file from the traffic camera?" "Yes," Ben nodded. "Arthur, is the paperwork for the new trust fund ready?" "It is," Arthur replied. "Good." I turned to the window. The snow was falling again. Sunday. We go home on Sunday. Are you sure you're ready, Evelyn? Sarah asked gently. It's going to be emotional. I'm not emotional, Sarah, I said, watching my reflection in the dark glass. I'm not a mother anymore. I'm not a victim. I turned back to them. I am the landlord. And I am coming to evict the squatters. The dining room table in Sarah's house had vanished. In its place stood a fortress of paper. Stacks of legal pads, printed emails, and manila folders covered every square inch of the wood. The air smelled of stale coffee and laser printer toner. It was Friday night, 2 days before the estate sale. 2 days before Mark and Jessica planned to sell my life to the highest bidder. We have it, Ben said. He walked into the room, his laptop tucked under his arm like a weapon. He didn't sit down. He placed the computer on top of a stack of files and opened the screen. I got the subpoena rushed through this afternoon, Ben explained, his fingers dancing over the keyboard. This is from the surveillance camera at the North Ridge Ranger Station. It's a government camera, high definition. It captures every vehicle entering and leaving the National Forest fire roads. Arthur, Sarah, and I gathered around the glowing screen. Watch, Ben commanded. He pressed play. The timestamp in the corner read 9:18 a.m. The black Ford F-150 rolled into the frame. The windows were tinted, but the morning sun hit the windshield just right. You could see 3 silhouettes, 1 driver, 1 passenger, and 1 person in the back seat. Me, 3 people, Ben stated flatly. He fast-forwarded the video. The timestamp spun forward. 9:56 a.m. The same truck appeared again, heading the opposite direction, leaving the forest. Pause, Ben said. The image froze. The sun had shifted, but the view was clear enough. 2 silhouettes in the front. The back seat was empty. 3 in, 2 out, Arthur summarized. His voice was dry, devoid of surprise. 40 minutes to drive deep into the woods, dump a body, and drive back. It fits the timeline perfectly. I stared at the screen. I looked at the empty space in the back of the truck. That empty space was me. That was the moment I ceased to exist in their world. This is probable cause, Ben said, closing the laptop. With this footage, plus your statement, I can get a warrant for Mark and Jessica's arrest right now. Kidnapping, attempted manslaughter, elder abuse. No, I said, the word hung in the air. Ben looked at me, confused. Not yet, I clarified. If you arrest them tonight, they will lawyer up. They will post bail. They will spin a story about how I demanded to be let out to take a walk and they accidentally lost me. They will muddy the waters. I turned to Arthur. I want the public execution. I want them caught in the act of selling my home. I want the neighbors to see. I want the world to know exactly who they are. Arthur nodded slowly. A small grim smile played on his lips. The court of public opinion. Very well. Then we proceed with the civil trap first. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out 3 thick documents. He laid them out on the table with the precision of a surgeon laying out scalpels. Document 1, Arthur said, tapping the first pile. An emergency ex parte restraining order. Once filed, Mark and Jessica cannot come within 500 feet of you or your property. If they do, they go to jail immediately. No bail discussion. Document 2, he continued. A formal complaint for fraud and identity theft. This is for the bank. It freezes your assets. It flags the loan application as criminal activity. It protects your credit score and puts the FBI on their trail for wire fraud. And finally, Arthur placed his hand on the thickest document. The Revocable Living Trust. I looked at the cover page. The Frank and Evelyn Miller Charitable Trust. This changes everything, Arthur explained. In the US, if you simply have a will, it goes through probate. It takes months. Family members can contest it. They can drag it out in court, claiming you were incompetent. He opened the document to the signature page. But a trust is different. A trust is immediate. The moment you sign this, the title of your house, your savings, your life insurance, everything, transfers from Evelyn Miller, individual, to the trust. You are the trustee. You control it. But legally, you own nothing. Arthur looked me in the eye. And the beneficiary of the trust is not your son. It is the foundation, I finished for him. Correct, Arthur said. The foundation dedicated to supporting victims of domestic elder abuse. We have also included a specific disinheritance clause. He pointed to a paragraph on page 12. I read the words silently. I, Evelyn Miller, intentionally and with full knowledge, omit to provide for my son, Mark Miller, and his issue. This is not a mistake. It is a decision based on his conduct. This cuts him off completely, Arthur said. He won't get a dime. He won't get the house. He won't even get your old toaster. If he tries to sue, the trust has a no-contest clause that will bankrupt him in legal fees. Sarah stepped forward. I am a licensed notary public, she said, pulling a stamp out of her purse. I can notarize these right now. I picked up the pen. It was a heavy, black fountain pen. My hand hovered over the paper. For 35 years, everything I did was for Mark. I worked double shifts at the diner to buy him his first bike. I wore the same winter coat for 10 years so he could have braces. I saved every penny so he could go to college without debt. My entire identity was Mark's mom. If I signed this, that identity was gone. I was severing the limb to save the body. I thought about the snow. I thought about the cold. I thought about Jessica calling me an old bitch. And I thought about Mark, washing his truck while I froze. He didn't just kill his mother. He killed the part of me that was a mother. I lowered the pen. The nib scratched against the paper. The sound was loud in the quiet room. Evelyn Marie Miller. I signed the restraining order. I signed the fraud affidavit. I signed the trust. I put the pen down. My hand didn't shake. Not even a little. Done, I said. Sarah pressed her notary stamp onto the papers. Thump, thump, thump. The sound was final, like a gavel striking a block. The house is no longer mine, I said, looking at the trust document. It belongs to the foundation. And on Sunday, Arthur said, gathering the papers into his briefcase, you are going there as the president of that foundation to inspect your property. Ben stood up. He cracked his knuckles. I'll coordinate with the sheriff. We'll have a patrol car on standby just out of sight. When you give the signal, we move in. What is the signal? Sarah asked. I looked at the yellow flyer Ben had brought in earlier. The invitation to the estate sale. It said, coffee and refreshments provided. When I ask for a cup of tea, I said. That's the signal. Arthur checked his watch. It's late. We should rest. Tomorrow, we rehearse. I walked to the window of Sarah's living room. The streetlights were humming. Somewhere out there, Mark and Jessica were sleeping soundly, dreaming of the money they would make on Sunday. They were dreaming of the kitchen renovation. They were dreaming of a life without the burden. They didn't know that the burden was coming back, and this time, she was bringing the law with her. Sleep well, Mark, I whispered to the glass. Enjoy your last weekend of freedom. I turned off the light. The room plunged into darkness, but I wasn't afraid of the dark anymore. I was the one bringing it. Sunday morning arrived with a cruel, mocking brilliance. The sky was a piercing blue, the kind of Colorado blue that usually made my heart sing. But today, the sunlight felt like a spotlight on a crime scene. I sat in the back of Arthur's black SUV. The tinted windows shielded me from the world, but I could see everything. We turned onto Elm Street. My street. It looked like a carnival. Cars were parked bumper to bumper along both curbs, blocking mailboxes and driveways. People were walking in droves toward my house, carrying coffee cups and reusable shopping bags. And there were signs. Everywhere, estate sale. Everything must go. My stomach churned, a sour mix of nausea and rage. They hadn't even waited for a death certificate. They were picking the meat off my bones while I was still breathing. Breathe, Evelyn, Arthur said, from the front passenger seat. He didn't turn around, but his voice was steadying. Remember the plan. You are not a victim today. You are the judge. I know, I replied. My hands were resting on my lap, smoothing the wool of my best Sunday coat. Beneath the coat, my hip was throbbing, a constant reminder of the metal pins the surgeons had put in. We pulled up right in front of the driveway. Ben, who was driving, blocked the entrance aggressively. Through the window, I saw the front lawn. It was covered in tables. My life was spread out on folding tables. There was Frank's tool set. $5. My gardening pots. $2. The quilt I hand-stitched for Mark when he went to college. $10. And there stood Mark. He was standing by the garage door, holding a cash box. He looked terrible, pale, unshaven. He was taking money from a neighbor, forcing a smile that looked more like a grimace of pain. He looked over his shoulder constantly, twitching like a nervous animal. Ready? Ben asked. Ready, I said. The door opened. The first person to step out wasn't me. It was Sheriff Miller, no relation, who had met us at the corner. He stepped out of his cruiser, parked behind us, adjusting his belt. His uniform was crisp, his badge gleaming in the sun. The chatter on the lawn died down instantly. People stopped haggling over my toaster. They looked at the police car. Then Ben opened my door. He unfolded the wheelchair we had rented. He moved with military precision. He didn't treat me like an invalid. He treated me like a queen ascending her throne. I shifted from the car seat to the chair. The pain spiked, white hot, but I didn't flinch. I let Ben tuck the blanket around my legs. Arthur stood on my right. The sheriff stood on my left. Let's go, I whispered. Ben pushed the chair. The wheels crunched on the gravel of the driveway. Crunch, crunch, crunch. The sound was the only thing audible on the entire street. We moved through the crowd. People parted like the Red Sea. I saw their faces, shock, confusion, recognition. Is that Evelyn, Mrs. Gable from next door whispered, clutching a ceramic vase she was about to buy. She dropped it. It shattered on the concrete. Crash. The noise made Mark look up. He froze. He was holding a $20 bill in one hand and the cash box in the other. His eyes went wide, his mouth opened, but no sound came out. All the blood drained from his face, leaving him the color of old paper. He dropped the cash box. It hit the ground with a metallic clang, spilling coins and bills everywhere. He didn't move to pick them up. He just stared at me. He looked like he was seeing a ghost in a wheelchair. I didn't stop. I didn't look at him. My eyes were fixed on the front door. Inside, I commanded Ben. We rolled past Mark. I could smell his sweat, the sour stench of fear. We entered the living room. It was stripped. The rugs were rolled up. The paintings were gone from the walls, leaving pale rectangular ghosts on the paint. And there was Jessica. She was standing in the center of the room, talking to a young couple. She was wearing a modest black dress, playing the part of the grieving daughter-in-law to perfection. She held a tissue in one hand. It's so hard, I heard her say, her voice trembling theatrically. We loved her so much. But she would have wanted us to move on. She would have wanted a young family like yours to enjoy this home. That's why we are selling it below market value. We just need closure. Closure, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but in the empty, echoing room, it sounded like a gunshot. Jessica stopped mid-sentence. She turned around slowly. The color didn't drain from her face like it did Mark's. Instead, her face went rigid. Her eyes narrowed. For a split second, I saw pure, unadulterated fury. She wasn't scared. She was angry that her plan had been interrupted. Then, the realization hit her. The sheriff, Arthur. The neighbors peering in through the windows. Her mask slipped. Evelyn, she squeaked. You're alive? Disappointed? I asked. Ben pushed me further into the room, until I was just a few feet away from her. I looked up at her. For years, I had felt small next to her. She was tall, loud, demanding. But now, sitting in this chair, I felt 10 feet tall. We thought, Jessica stammered, looking past me to Mark, who had stumbled into the doorway, leaning against the frame for support. We thought you were lost, Mark said. Mark said what? I cut her off. That he left me on the side of the road? That you pushed me? The young couple who wanted to buy the house took a step back. The wife grabbed her husband's arm. No, Jessica shouted, her voice shrill. That's not true. She's confused. Officer, she has dementia. She wanders off. We have been looking everywhere for her. She pointed a manicured finger at me. She's sick. Don't listen to her. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I simply reached into the pocket of my coat. I pulled out a clear plastic bag. Inside was the receipt from the gas station at the edge of the logging road. Ben had found it in the trash can at the station. It had the time stamp, and it had Jessica's credit card number. I also pulled out the notarized affidavit from Dr. Evans regarding my mental state. I am not confused, Jessica, I said calmly. And I am not lost. I looked around the room. I looked at the price tag stuck to the mantelpiece. I looked at the empty spot where Frank's favorite armchair used to be. Then I looked her dead in the eye. You put a price tag on my toaster. You put a price tag on my husband's tools. I paused. The room was so quiet I could hear the clock ticking in the hallway. "So tell me," I asked, my voice dropping to a whisper that carried the weight of the entire winter storm. "What exactly are you selling today, Jessica? This house? Or my life?" Jessica opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She looked at the sheriff. The sheriff wasn't smiling. He had his hand resting near his handcuffs. "Mrs. Miller," the sheriff stepped forward, his voice deep and authoritative. "We have a warrant to search this property, and we have some questions about a timeline involving a trip to Blackwood Ridge." Mark made a sound. It was a sob. He slid down the doorframe and sat on the floor, putting his head in his hands. "I told you," Mark wailed. "I told you she would come back. I told you we shouldn't have done it." "Shut up, Mark," Jessica hissed, turning on him like a viper. "That's enough," the sheriff barked. I sat back in my wheelchair. I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for 5 days. I looked at the young couple. They looked terrified. "I apologize for the inconvenience," I said to them politely. "But this house is not for sale. It never was, and it never will be." I turned my head to the window. The sun was still shining. But now, it didn't look like a spotlight on a crime scene. It looked like the sun. "Ben," I said softly, "please ask these people to leave. I would like to have a word with my son. Before you take him away." The front door clicked shut. The young couple, the ones looking for a starter home, had fled the scene, looking pale and terrified. Now, the room was quiet, but it wasn't empty. The sheriff stood by the door, arms crossed, blocking the only exit. Ben stood by the window, his eyes fixed on Mark. Arthur stood in the center of the room, next to my wheelchair. And then there were the defendants. Mark sat on the floor, his head in his hands, rocking back and forth. Jessica stood near the fireplace, clutching her purse so tight her knuckles were yellow. She wasn't crying, she was calculating. I could see her eyes darting around the room, looking for an angle, a lie, a way out. "Let's get this over with," Jessica snapped. "This is ridiculous. Evelyn, tell them to leave. We were just worried about you. We thought you wandered off. We were selling the stuff to pay for a private investigator." "A private investigator?" Arthur repeated. His voice was calm, melodic, dangerously low. "Is that what you call a garage sale?" Arthur opened his briefcase. He didn't look like a librarian anymore. He looked like the judge he used to be. Every movement was precise. Every glance was a gavel strike. "Let's look at the timeline," Arthur said. He pulled out a tablet and placed it on the coffee table, the coffee table Mark had priced at $15. He tapped the screen. The video from the ranger station played. "Exhibit A," Arthur said. 9:18 a.m. 3 people enter the forest. 9:56 a.m. 2 people leave. Mark made a choking sound. "That doesn't prove anything," Jessica hissed. "We dropped her off at a diner. Down the road, she wanted to get coffee." "In the middle of a restricted logging zone?" Arthur asked, raising an eyebrow. "Interesting choice for a cappuccino." He swiped the screen. A new image appeared. It wasn't a video. It was a photograph taken in the hospital. It showed my back, specifically, the area just below my left shoulder blade. The skin was purple and black, and right in the center of the bruise was a distinct, diamond-shaped pattern. "Exhibit B," Arthur continued, his voice hardening. The attending physician noted that this injury was consistent with blunt force trauma. Specifically, a kick. He turned to Jessica. He looked down at her feet. She was wearing stylish leather boots, hiking boots, with a diamond tread sole. "Would you like to take off your left shoe for comparison, Mrs. Miller?" Arthur asked. Jessica took a step back. Her arrogance faltered. For the first time, I saw fear flicker behind her eyes. "Mark!" she shrieked. "Say something. Tell them." Mark looked up. His face was wet with tears and snot. He looked at the photo of my bruised back. He looked at me. Mark stammered. I didn't touch her. Mom, I swear, I didn't touch you." "No," I said softly. "You didn't. You just watched." "It was Jessica," Mark blurted out. The words exploded out of him, desperate and pathetic. He scrambled to his knees, crawling toward my wheelchair. "Mom, please. It was her idea. She said you were a burden. She said we needed the money. I told her no. I told her we shouldn't." You liar! Jessica screamed. She lunged at him, but Ben stepped forward, placing himself between them. She made me drive away, Mark continued, ignoring his wife, focused entirely on saving his own skin. I wanted to go back, Mom. I swear. But she took my keys. She said. She said, if I went back, she would leave me. She said, I was weak. I looked down at my son. The boy I had protected from bullies. The boy I had nursed through fevers. Now, he was a 40-year-old man pointing a finger at his wife like a child caught stealing cookies. You are weak, Mark, I said. That is the truest thing she ever said. But I didn't hurt you, Mark sobbed, grabbing the wheel of my chair. Exhibit C, Arthur interrupted. He wasn't done. He pulled a single sheet of paper from his file. He held it up to the light. The loan application, Arthur announced, submitted to First National Bank. Signed by Evelyn Miller. Dated the morning of the disappearance. Arthur looked at Mark. Your mother was in the hospital, unconscious, under the name Jane Doe when this was submitted. So, Mark, unless your mother can bilocate, someone forged her signature. The room went deadly silent. Bank fraud. Mark froze. He knew what that meant. Assault was one thing, a messy, he said she said situation. But bank fraud? That was a paper trail. That was federal. That was undeniable. Mark whispered, we needed the down payment. So you sold your mother, I said. I looked at Jessica. She had stopped screaming. She was leaning against the wall, her arms crossed, her face a mask of stone. She knew the game was over. She wasn't looking at Mark. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the handcuffs on the sheriff's belt. It's over, Arthur said, closing the file. We have the video. We have the medical report. We have the forged documents. And we have the witness. I looked at them. My family. The people who were supposed to be my safety net. Why? I asked. It was the only question that mattered. Why not just ask? Why did it have to be this? Jessica laughed. It was a cold, bitter sound. Ask? She sneered. We did ask, Evelyn. At Thanksgiving. You said no. You and your precious memories. You sat in this big house, hoarding your equity, while we lived in a shoebox. You owed us. I owed you nothing, I said, my voice steady. I gave you life, Mark. I gave you an education. I gave you love. But I do not owe you my death. Mark reached for my hand. Mom, please. Don't let them arrest us. I'll make it up to you. We can fix this. I'm your son. I pulled my hand away. It wasn't an angry motion. It was just final. I am not doing this because I hate you, Mark, I said. I felt a tear run down my cheek, but I didn't wipe it away. I am not doing this out of vengeance. I looked at him, really looked at him, one last time. I am doing this to teach you the lesson that your father and I should have taught you years ago. We protected you too much. We shielded you from every fall. We paid every debt. I took a deep breath. The air in the house smelled of the lemon polish they had used to clean the furniture for the sale. It smelled of lies. But I cannot pay this debt for you. I whispered. Every action has a price, Mark. And today, the bill is due. I nodded to the sheriff. Sheriff Miller, I said. Please do your job. The sheriff stepped forward. The sound of Velcro ripping as he detached the handcuffs was loud in the silence. Mark Miller, Jessica Miller, the sheriff's voice boomed. You are under arrest for attempted voluntary manslaughter, elder abuse, and bank fraud. No, Mom! Mark screamed, as the sheriff pulled his hands behind his back. The metal cuffs clicked, click, click. Jessica didn't scream. She held her head high, her eyes cold and dead, as Ben cuffed her. She stared at me with pure hatred. You'll die alone in this house, old woman, she spat, as Ben led her toward the door. Better alone, I replied, watching them go. Then with snakes, Ben and the sheriff marched them out. I watched through the window. I saw the neighbors watching. I saw Mrs. Gable cover her mouth with her hand. I saw the red and blue lights of the police car flashing, reflecting off the snow that still lingered on the lawn. Mark was weeping as they pushed him into the back seat. He looked at the house one last time. He looked at me. I didn't look away. I didn't wave. The car doors slammed shut. The engine roared. And then, they were gone. The room was silent again. Arthur stood beside me. He placed a hand on my shoulder. He didn't say anything. He knew there were no words for this kind of pain. I looked at the empty tables, the price tags, the chaos. My house was a mess. My family was gone. My heart was broken. But I was safe. Arthur, I said, my voice trembling slightly, would you mind helping me with the tea? I believe I promised everyone a cup. I would be honored, Arthur said, and for the first time in a week, I felt the warmth return to my fingertips. Not from a fire, but from the fire inside me. I had survived the winter. Now, it was time to clean up the spring. The seasons changed, but the wheels of justice turned slowly. Winter melted into a muddy spring, and now, summer was knocking on the door. But inside the county courthouse, the air remained stale and cold. I didn't go to the trial. I couldn't bear to sit in the gallery and watch the spectacle. I couldn't bear to see Jessica's lawyer try to paint me as a senile old woman, or see Mark sitting at the defense table, shrinking into his cheap suit. Instead, I let my voice do the work. The deposition I recorded with Arthur was played for the jury. My ghost spoke for me while I sat in my garden, pruning the roses Frank had planted. When the verdict finally came down, it was Ben who brought the news. He sat at my kitchen table, the same table where Mark had eaten 1,000 breakfasts. Ben looked tired. The shadows under his eyes told me it had been a long fight. "It's over, Evelyn," Ben said, resting his hand on his coffee mug. "Tell me," I said. I didn't stop wiping the counter. I needed to keep my hands busy. "Jessica got 12 years, Ben said. There was a grim satisfaction in his voice. State penitentiary, no parole for at least 8. The prosecutor brought in witnesses from her old neighborhood in Chicago. Apparently, this wasn't her first time. She had a history of elder abuse with a former landlord. She has a pattern, Evelyn. You were just her latest target. 12 years. I looked out the window. 12 years was a long time. But it wasn't enough to pay for a life. "And Mark?" I asked. My voice remained steady, though my heart gave a painful little thump. Ben sighed. He rubbed the back of his neck. "Mark cut a deal. He testified against her. He gave the DA everything, the text messages, the financial records, the planning. He painted himself as the reluctant victim of a manipulative wife. He was always good at playing the victim," I murmured. "The judge bought it, mostly," Ben continued. 5 years probation, suspended sentence. He has to do community service and pay restitution. He's being released from county jail to a halfway house this afternoon." I stopped wiping the counter. "He is free," I stated. "Technically." Ben nodded. "But he has a criminal record now. A felony fraud conviction. His life as he knew it is over." I untied my apron and hung it on the hook. The fabric was old and soft. "I need to see him," I said. Ben frowned. "Evelyn, you don't have to. The restraining order is permanent. He can't come near you." "I know," I said, turning to face him. "I'm not going to hug him, Ben. I'm going to say goodbye." The visitation room at the probation center was painted a depressing shade of institutional gray. It smelled of floor wax and stale despair. I sat on one side of the thick glass partition. When Mark walked in, I barely recognized him. He had lost weight. His hair was thinning. The arrogant, well-fed man who drove the truck that snowy morning was gone. In his place was a man who looked hollowed out. He sat down. He picked up the phone receiver. I picked up mine. "Mom," he breathed. His voice was crackly through the receiver. "You came." "I came," I said. "I knew you would," he said, and a flicker of the old Mark appeared. A glimmer of hope. "It's been hell, Mom. You have no idea. That place, the food, the people. I was so scared." He leaned closer to the glass. "But it's over now. Jessica is gone. She can't hurt us anymore. I told the judge everything. I did it for you, Mom. I wanted to make it right. I listened. I watched his face. I was searching for something. Remorse? Guilt? Understanding? But all I saw was relief. He wasn't sorry for what he did. He was just glad he got caught and didn't have to go to prison. He was glad Mommy was here to fix the rest." "I get out in an hour," Mark said, his eyes scanning my face. I don't have a ride. And my truck was impounded. I was thinking, maybe we could stop and get a steak? I haven't had real meat in 6 months, and then, I can help you with the garden. I bet the weeds are bad. He assumed he was coming home. He thought the slate was wiped clean. He thought that because he testified against Jessica, he was absolved. He thought love was a reset button he could press whenever he was in trouble. Mark, I said. My voice was soft, but it felt heavy in my throat. Yeah, Mom? You aren't coming home. The smile froze on his face. What? But where will I go? The house in the suburbs is gone. The bank took it. Jessica took all our savings. I know, I said. That is unfortunate. Unfortunate? His voice rose an octave. Mom, I'm your son. You have a 4-bedroom house. You can't just leave me on the street. I have nothing. You have your freedom, I reminded him. You aren't in a cell like your wife. That is more than you gave me when you left me in the snow. He flinched. He looked down at his hands. I told you, that was her. I'm not her. No, I agreed. You aren't her. She is a wolf. You are the sheep that holds the gate open for the wolf. I reached into my purse. I pulled out a folded piece of paper. Mark watched me, his eyes lit up. He thought it was a check. He thought it was money. He thought, even now, after everything, I was still the ATM. I slid the paper through the slot at the bottom of the glass. Mark grabbed it. His fingers were trembling. He unfolded it eagerly. His face fell. It wasn't a check. It wasn't a key. It was a printout from the internet. What is this? He asked, staring at the paper. It is the address of the Workforce Development Center downtown, I explained calmly. They help people with criminal records find manual labor jobs. Construction, sanitation, dishwashing. They also have a list of subsidized shelters. Mark looked at me with horror. You want me to wash dishes? I have a degree, Mom. I was a regional manager. You were a regional manager, I corrected him. Now, you are a felon on probation. And you are almost 40 years old. I stood up. My hip ached, but I stood tall. For 40 years, Mark, I solved your problems. When you broke a window, I paid for it. When you failed a class, I hired a tutor. When you couldn't make rent, I wrote a check. I placed my hand on the glass, right where his face was reflecting. I crippled you with my help, I said. I taught you that consequences were for other people. That was my failure as a mother. And this. I pointed to the paper in his hand. This is me, finally being a good parent. Mom, please. Mark stood up, slamming his hand against the glass. The guard in the corner took a step forward. Don't do this. I can't do this alone. You have to, I said. It's time to grow up, Mark. Take responsibility for your own life. Nobody is coming to save you. I hate you. He screamed. The mask finally fell off completely. You selfish old hag. I hope you die alone in that house. The guard moved in. He grabbed Mark's shoulder. I looked at my son, screaming and spitting at the glass. It didn't hurt me. It was like watching a stranger throw a tantrum. The cord was cut. Goodbye, Mark, I whispered. I turned around and walked toward the heavy steel door. I didn't look back. I heard him shouting my name, but the sound grew fainter with every step. Buzz. The door unlocked. I pushed it open and stepped outside. The air hit me first. It was crisp and cold. I looked up at the sky. Gray clouds were swirling above the parking lot. As I walked toward Arthur's car, waiting at the curb, I felt a familiar touch on my cheek. A snowflake. Then another. It was snowing. Just like that morning in the forest. The world was turning white again. I stopped. I let the snow fall on my face. I remembered the terror I felt back then. I remembered the cold that seeped into my bones, telling me to give up and die. But today, I stood there, and I didn't shiver. I pulled my coat tighter around me. It wasn't a shroud anymore. It was armor. Mark was behind me, trapped in his own winter. Jessica was gone. I was here. I walked to the car. Arthur was waiting. He had the heater running. Everything okay? Arthur asked as I buckled my seatbelt. Yes, I said, watching the snowflakes melt on the windshield. Everything is exactly as it should be. I wasn't cold. For the first time in a long time, the fire was inside me, and it was burning bright enough to last the rest of my life. The snow didn't leave all at once. It retreated slowly, fighting a losing war against the Colorado sun. First, the driveway cleared, revealing the gravel where Mark had dropped the cash box. Then, the front lawn emerged, brown and matted, but alive. Finally, the crocuses pushed through. Tiny purple soldiers announcing that the siege was over. I stood on my front porch, holding a mug of tea. It wasn't the bitter tea of shock I drank in the hospital, nor the polite tea of the estate sale. It was Earl Grey, hot and fragrant, with a splash of milk. The house behind me was noisy, but it wasn't the noise of conflict. It was the sound of a power drill and the hum of a sander. We didn't sell the house, but I didn't keep it as a mausoleum either. Evelyn, where do you want these shelves? I turned. Arthur was standing in the doorway, wearing a tool belt over his button-down shirt. He looked ridiculous and wonderful. By the south window, I directed him. The light is better for reading there. We were knocking down the wall between the living room and the dining room. The space where Jessica had stood and called me a burden was gone. In its place, we were building a library. A real one. The Frank and Evelyn Miller Foundation was no longer just a piece of paper in Arthur's briefcase. It was here. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, the first floor opened up. We called it the Silver Lining Club. It wasn't just a book club, it was a sanctuary. We had 6 members already. There was Martha, whose daughter tried to declare her incompetent to get her pension. There was old Mr. Henderson, whose nephew stole his car. We sat together, we drank coffee, we read books, but mostly, we talked about legal rights. We talked about trusts. We talked about how to say no to the people we raised. I wasn't just a survivor anymore. I was a teacher. Delivery! A voice called out from the driveway. Ben walked up the path, carrying 2 large grocery bags. He wasn't in uniform. He was wearing jeans and a t-shirt. Sarah sent lasagna, Ben announced, grinning. She said if you try to cook again this week, she's going to sue you for violation of the Relaxation Act. I laughed. A real, belly-deep laugh that didn't hurt my chest. Sarah is a tyrant, I said, taking one of the bags. A wonderful, bossy tyrant. Sarah arrived 10 minutes later, still in her scrubs, looking exhausted but happy. We gathered around the new kitchen island, the one I designed, not the one Jessica wanted. This was my Sunday dinner now. There was no turkey, there was no fine china. We ate off mismatched plates because I had donated half of my good stuff to a women's shelter. I looked around the table. There was Arthur, debating the merits of a new mystery novel with Ben. There was Sarah, telling a funny story about a patient who thought he was a pirate. There was Ben, stealing the garlic bread when he thought no one was looking. None of them had my DNA. None of them carried the name Miller. 6 months ago, I thought family was defined by blood. I thought it was an obligation you were born into, a debt you paid until you died. I thought being a mother meant being a doormat. I looked at Arthur. He caught my eye and winked. I realized then that family isn't the people who push you into the snow. Family are the people who find you in the snow. Family are the people who bring you blankets when you are cold, and lasagna when you are tired. Evelyn? Ben asked, pausing with a forkful of pasta. You okay? You spaced out for a second. I'm fine, I smiled. I was just thinking about the garden. I think I'll plant hydrangeas this year. Blue ones. I'll come help you dig on Saturday. Ben offered immediately. I'll supervise. Arthur added dryly. We laughed again. The sound bounced off the freshly painted walls, filling the house with a warmth the furnace could never produce. Later that evening, after they had all gone, I stood by the front door. The house was quiet again, but it wasn't empty. It was full of their lingering presence. I walked to the mantel. The photo of Mark was gone. I had put it away in a box in the attic. I didn't burn it. You can't burn the past. But you don't have to display it in the center of your life, either. In its place stood a framed photo of the group of us, me, Arthur, Ben, and Sarah, standing in front of the library on the day my Jane Doe status was officially revoked. We looked tired in the photo, but we looked strong. My phone buzzed. It was a text from a neighbor, Mrs. Gable. Saw the cars. Looks like you had a full house. Don't you get lonely living there all by yourself now? It's so big for one person. I looked at the text. I looked at the dark hallway leading to the stairs. I remembered the fear I used to feel when Mark and Jessica came over. The walking on eggshells, the sleeping with one eye open, wondering what they wanted, what they were plotting, what piece of me they would take next. Loneliness? No. This wasn't loneliness. This was solitude. And there is a vast ocean of difference between the two. I typed my reply slowly, savoring every word. Many people ask me if I am lonely without my children. I paused, looking at the deadbolt on the door. It was a new lock. Heavy duty. I tell them this. I would rather be lonely in a house where I am respected, than live in a crowd where I have to sleep with one eye open in fear. I hit send. I walked to the door and opened it one last time. The night air was cool. The stars were bright, unhidden by the storm clouds. I took the key from my pocket. It was a heavy brass key. Mark didn't have a copy. Jessica didn't have a copy. No one had a copy unless I gave it to them. My door is always open, I thought, closing it and listening to the solid, reassuring thud of the latch. But I am the only one who holds the key. And I am the only one who decides who is worthy to step inside. The story you just heard has had its names and locations changed to protect the identities of those involved. We're not sharing this to judge anyone, but in the hope that someone out there will pause and reflect. How many mothers are silently suffering in their own homes? Honestly, I wonder. If you were in my shoes, what would you do? Would you stay quiet to keep the peace, or would you speak up and fight to reclaim your voice? I'd really love to hear your thoughts on this story from Grandma's Secrets, or any feedback you have that could help us make our content even better. God always blesses the brave, and I truly believe courage leads us toward better days. For now, I'm leaving two of the most loved stories from our channel on the end screen. I think they'll surprise you. Thank you for staying with me until this very moment. If this story touched your heart, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss what's coming next.